Hi, Nancy Radford, and welcome to Ordinary Visionaries. And the very first question I ask everybody is, what is it about you that makes you an ordinary visionary?
Think it's probably that I'm quite good at getting round to things. I don't like hanging on, and I'm known as the nag of the North. So I can sort of encourage people, connect people. Um, I think that gets things done.
Yeah, if nothing gets done. So, it's really true. A lot of people get stuck in not getting around to it. So, how long have you been doing this business? And is it essentially a coaching practice where you're working with people? How does
So
it look like that
I've
you work with?
I've done lots of different things. We've had a company called Round to It, which we first set up when we had a print business to help people who
Oh,
were trying to self-publish. So it was about helping them get round to producing their book. I then went into coaching and consultancy when we sold our print business, but we kept the name because it's always seems to be part of what I do. So it's helping people get round to, as a coach, getting round to doing all sorts of things. As a mediator, which and conflict resolution, it's helping people get round to talking and round to resolving sometimes difficulties they've had for years. So
it's such a simple concept. And I was talking to you before we started recording about I said I remember seeing these round plastic discs that had to it on it. You want a round to it? Well, here it is. And then you picked up one that you have in your business. You want to pick it up and show it to us and read it to
yeah,
us?
sure. So it says, this is a round to it. Guard it well. These are hard to come by. It will help your business become more successful. For those of you who say, I'll do some marketing or whatever when I get around to it, now you have one. So don't put aside this important task.
That is so great. So have you handed out a lot of those? Do you hand them out like business cards?
No, no, I tend to be a bit more subtle about it and sort of ask questions like, so what could you do just now? You say what you can't do, but what could you do? And just help people take that first step, I think. Because a lot of times people are, oh, I can't do it because I don't have the money. I can't do it because I don't have the experience, But if you start thinking, well, what could you do? Or what do you need to be
Yes,
able to do it?
right. Well, you're not too far away from how I worked with clients. My words were action plan. What's your plan? And what's your first little step in your plan? Well, the first thing is to write a plan. Oh, we have no plan. It's just in our heads, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
so getting down to the thing. So
Well,
tell me, give me some
can I
examples.
just
Go
say
ahead.
one thing about your business? When we had our print
Yeah.
business, which was, we're talking, I don't know when you started, but when email was in its very infancy, you were one of the first people marketing. And we used to always tell new businesses, there you go, read that man's email.
So that's all my North England subscribers, right?
Yeah,
uh, yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So you've been on my list for a long time,
yeah, long time.
for, for more than 20 years. It's wonderful
Mm,
that there's people that have been on my list, but they maybe they bought my manual, maybe they were on a teleconference, but they weren't in one of my courses, whatever. But it's great to meet those people because there's been thousands of them over the years.
yeah.
So let's sort of get into this because I think this is a very simple thing. And when I talk about ordinary visionaries, people often say, well, I had this brilliant idea, the idea that would change the world. Then I put it into action. And, but, for most people, it's just getting ordinary stuff done and supporting people in doing what they wanted to do, achieving their vision. So talk about some of the, give me an idea of, you
Yeah,
sent a lot of them to me.
yeah.
Give me an idea
I
of some of the
guess
things you've worked on and the difference that you made.
I guess one of the things that I always think is important is trying to figure out what the problem is, because sometimes people come to you with a problem or a thing they want done, and it's not actually what they want. You have to figure out what's stopping them. So one of the first things that I kind of discovered that this idea worked in was I was asked to do some research into and promote a specific type of midwifery training that had been around for 10 years. Government thought it was going to be a lot cheaper, but nobody had taken it up. So they said, we want you to go out and promote it. Here's some money. You've got a year to do it. So I said, well, that's all very well, but if we don't know why people don't promote it, we can spend a fortune on advertising. So what I did was we did some research. We found out the main obstacles that were stopping people take up the training. And then we created kind of a handbook to help them put the training into action. And within a year of our book being put out, every region had one of these training. And I think again, it's always what is it that's the problem and what are the obstacles? Once you identify those, then you either work out it's not going to work or there's things you can do to make it work.
Yeah, my mind is just spinning about all the possibilities of just getting clarity. What's in the way?
Yeah.
What's the problem? Instead of jumping in with some wonderful solution that will cost a lot of money and doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. And I
Why
think
are people why are people not doing
I think it's not sexy. It's not exciting. Yeah. And because people want
it?
to almost go diving into the action. And, at some stage, you can't research everything to the nth degree. At some stage, you're going to have to take that leap. But there was another course that we designed. And when I started in this job, I came in and my desk was covered like this with self-help books. And she said, oh, read those. And I thought, well, anybody can write these books. What I want to know is there any research? Because we were working with people that were 6 generations unemployed, who didn't really even think it was worth looking for a job. And they wanted,
Six
of course,
generations unemployed?
yeah,
So they've been on the dole for six generations?
yeah. So the
Oh
kids
my,
were
oh my.
being told by their parents, oh, don't even bother trying at school because you'll not get a job. It was one of the most deprived areas in England. And
Wow.
so I decided we would look at, positive psychology and what it was that makes people thrive. How do you boost so everything, all our exercises were based on research into what, builds up resources and stuff. And then we created like really easy quizzes or things that we could read out loud, or we had an extra exercise with the tightrope. So for people that hated school, hated learning, it was more of a game thing. And we got that course started. Then we got it accredited. We did a course for parents to teach their kids. And what we did is at the start of the course, we had a measurement of their mental health and well-being. And at the end, we had it. so that we could say, look, we know this works because of this. We know this works because at the end, everybody put a list of what they were going to do, that they were going to go to the job center, and they were followed up. And I think we probably about 500 people in the time I was there. And that was coming up for 12, 14, no, 15 years ago. They're still running that course, and it's still making a difference, because my thing is I always try and make myself redundant. So after the first year, we developed a train the trainers course, trained up some more people, handed it over, and then I went off to do something else. So
Right. So are they finding now that more of these kids are getting jobs than before?
yeah, and I think part of it was just to get them to the stage to feel that they were worth it. Because one of the things we used to do was you'd go in and you'd have maybe 8 or 10 people there. Sometimes they were kids, sometimes they were sort of young adults. You say, okay, so what are you guys good at? Nothing. You go into most places, people say, oh, I'm good at football. But that was universal, I'm good at nothing. And we had a
Wow.
quiz that was based on character strengths that we read out loud. And it was just really easy, and they just had to tick a box. And at the end, we said, okay, now you tell me what your highest score was. That means you have wisdom, and wisdom is people come to you and ask you for advice, and you said, that's you, is that right? And they'd all go, oh yeah. And you could literally see their bodies change as they realize, oh, actually, I'm good for something. And once you get that, and we used heart math, have you heard about that? Where you can
Art
see
Math
the
is
impact.
located in my town.
Is it? Well, we use that as
Art Math
part
is
of the
from,
program.
right, they're in Boulder Creek, California, a few blocks away
Oh,
from me.
right.
Isn't
Well,
that
tell
interesting?
them he
All
had
the
an impact on people's lives in the northeast of England.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
fantastic. That really is
yeah.
something. Oh, if only governments could figure this out to empower people that needed empowering. It's really, really, really important, but not an
I
easy
think,
thing. It's
yeah,
not
I
an
think
easy
it's
thing administratively, you know?
no. And
Anyway,
I think it's kind of, the story of the starfish, don't you, Robert? Where the
of
guy's
the what?
walking along, of the
Oh, the
starfish.
starfish, yes,
Yeah, and
yes,
you could either get despair that there's no way we can help the whole country, or you can think, well, I can help that one. I can make a difference here. And I think that's
right.
sometimes what makes an ordinary visionary is you you kind of, maybe it's not settle for good enough, but you think, well, good enough will get me somewhere. Whereas if I wait till I can do everything I would love to do, I might be waiting forever.
Yeah. Better to be a mediocre person putting things into action than a brilliant person that doesn't do anything. Um,
Yeah. Well, if you want
you
to make
know,
a difference
I,
anyway.
if you want to make a difference, you got to start small. You know, I watch YouTube a lot, and you see a lot of YouTube commercials, and some are really good, but there's a lot of these things of, you can you can do this, in only 3 minutes a week, you'll be able to, whatever it is. Exercise is a big one. Making money online is a big one. And most of these things are always more complicated than they say, and most people don't take action on them. But people want that. This will turn you into a Superman, for God's sake, Uh,
Well, I guess we all want an easy life, and you all want, to have your cake and eat it too. And I think one of the
right.
big things that helps with achievement, with happiness, with anything, is accepting that A, life isn't fair, B, there's always a price, you know. So it's about accepting this is where we are. You know, we've got to start from here. Maybe we're not happy where we are. Maybe we haven't, you know, it's really unfair. But we can either moan about it or we can do something about it. Or just go, well,
Right.
that's how it is. I'll just have to put up with it.
Right. Um, so give us another story. I mean, this is really
Let's see.
inspiring.
One of the other things I did was I was asked to work with a charity that delivered service alternative healthcare therapies to people who were dying and recently bereaved people. And they, in Britain, there's quite a lot of rules around charities. And they were set up by a group of friends, one of whom was a therapist and one who was a fairly well-off person. And the chair lady decided to retire. So they brought me in and said, oh, we need someone to run the charity. So the first thing I looked at was, oh my goodness, you're not compliant with any of these policies. We had no idea of who we were looking after. There was no logic because it had just kind of grown like Popsy. So they were doing really good work. But the first thing I did was talk to each of the trustees, talk to all the staff we had, talk to a few patients, put in some systems to figure out what the money was being spent on, because they would just look in the bank balance and they keep track of all the money that was going out, but they didn't add it up and figure out. And I said, after about a month, I said, you can't really afford to employ me because although you have a healthy bank balance, there's not enough coming in. So what we need to do, so then they created a structure so that they could run it with that, you know, because they had systems, they could run it with less people. And I said, what you need to do is focus on how you're going to get funds in. And so we set up a plan. And so instead of going bust, they're still going, but I'm not with them. So, but yeah,
Nancy,
it's kind of fun.
say that again. Can you say that again? I wasn't clear about what you said there.
So
Last part.
I set up a strategy so that they could cope without a senior executive person, and told them to get in
Right.
a fundraiser instead. So that was 10 years ago, and they're still running. So they're and making a difference, and doing it more effectively because they know who they're helping. Geographically, we got them sorted out and things. So.
Um, so is that kind of a typical kind of project for you? They bring you
Yeah, I
in, they
think.
don't know what to do, things are kind of a mess.
Yeah, I think
You think
sometimes people don't even know what the mess is. They just know they need some help. Um, and what they think the mess is sometimes isn't actually what the mess is. And I think one of the first things that almost in itself helps, and it's what I do mainly as a mediator, is just talk to everybody that's involved and say, okay, so what are your issues? What have you been doing? What do you find hard to do? What do you struggle with? And sometimes as people talk, they suddenly go, you know, oh, no wonder, because there's something about being
right.
listened to that I think it was Carl Rogers said helps you actually sort stuff out in your brain because somebody's paying attention and you're thinking about how you can make that clearer to them. And in that process, you actually make it clearer to yourself. And once it's clear to everybody, I think a lot of people know what they should do, but they're not really clear about how they could do it. So the first thing is kind of getting that problem. And then the second thing is, do you want to solve it? So I was talking to someone about a mediation, and it was an employee-employer. And I said, let's kind of figure out, do you want to improve the relationship so you can bring this person back to work and have a good working relationship? Or is it a case of there's no way you want this person back and you want to negotiate a less problematic way out of it? And he sort of stopped and he said, oh, yeah, now I know what I want to do, because he hadn't actually, he told me the whole story and I just fed back to him, that there's two issues. Depends which one you want, which way you should go.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Which way did he go?
He actually, we then discovered that it was somebody that the firm, I knew the firm, I didn't know the person that was talking to me. So I said, actually, I'll hand it over to another mediator because it would be awkward for everybody. And I know they actually didn't go to mediation. I think that moment of clarity, they made an offer to the employee. But yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. We're trying to figure out problems, but we really have no idea what the problem is and what we really want, and therefore it just goes around in circles, right?
Yeah, and
You
I
must
think
be a breath of
that's,
fresh air when you come into a company.
well, what I would do now actually, because I discovered that an awful lot of problems are because either people don't like each other or can't work together or totally misunderstand what each other's saying. So in one case, we actually brought
Well, I've
in a
never had that
mediator.
problem in my life.
No, no. The number of people who said, oh, I never have any problem with anybody. And I just go, oh, really?
Uh,
You must be pretty amazing. Because, you know, I get on with most people, but there are still people I don't get on with. But I think then
well,
I saw a mediator at work, and that's why I do this now. Sorry.
right. Well, it's not easy getting along with people. Um, the thing that I've discovered is some people have certain habits that really grate against our beliefs and what our expectations, and yet we want them to change their habits. And it might be a little easier if we shifted our expectations, but it's not
Mm.
that easy because it's hard to
No,
see that. Oh,
I
they
think
should do it that way. Why won't they?
I think
Right?
that's one of the first things I say to people, that, in a mediation, it's not like being in front of a judge, where the judge is going to tell the people what to do. In the
Right.
mediation, it's you're persuading the other person to do what you want. So you have to think about how are you going to persuade them? What are you going to offer or what can you shift? So that's one important thing. And the other important thing that I find particularly helpful when people are, you're thinking, oh, it's so annoying, is to remember that everybody does stuff to meet their needs, right? People don't do it to be annoying to you. Hard as it may be to believe, they don't. So
Yes,
when
they're
I
out to get
start,
real.
yeah, yeah, I mean, they might be, but it's much more helpful to me to think, oh, maybe he's had a bad day, because then I act in a way that's much more likely to meet my needs. Because if I'm nice to you, you'll be nice to me, won't you? And it's easier for me to be nice to you if I'm feeling, oh, bless him, he probably tripped over his dog on the way in or something.
Right. There's some people that make up reasons why people are doing things a certain way, but we really have no idea.
No, no,
Oh, they must be thinking this. They must be this kind of person. They must be this. They must be that. And then that justifies our attitude towards them. But
yeah,
it's it's smoke and mirrors. We don't really know what's going on.
no. And so if
We
we
don't
don't
know
know
this.
what's going on, we might as well think of something that makes us behave in a way that's more likely to meet their needs and our needs. So if I'm curious, I'm much less likely to be furious. So I'm thinking, I wonder why they're doing that. So I think
Is that a
curiosity
saying of
is
yours?
another.
If you're curious, we got to repeat that. If you're curious, you're much less likely to be furious.
Yeah.
That
I'm
is,
not sure if I
that is
heard that from someone else or not, but I find I've done a lot of nonviolent communication, studying and
right.
doing courses, and it is just like opened so many doors because it's about understanding that there's not that feelings are messengers about your needs. So when you feel angry, it's because you have some unmet need, and you can either blame someone else for not meeting that need, or you can say, what is that need? Well, maybe there's some way I can meet it without that other person, which is a great liberation. And I guess,
I've had some of those liberating experiences in the last couple months, so I know what you're talking about. If only they
yeah,
would do this. Well, give it up. Find a different way to make it happen. I
yeah,
mean, we we also really hold on to these things like resentments and blame and accusation and I don't know what we get out of that. You probably have a good sense of that. I mean, somehow
yeah,
that meets my needs to be right or something. I don't know.
yeah. I think if we can give up thinking that if they're right, we're wrong. I always say, it's kind of like cheese. Yeah. So if I ask you to think of cheese, you might think of an Edam and say, well, it's red with a yellow inside. And I might be thinking of brie. And I go, no, 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 Robert, cheese is white. You know, and you're like, no, Nancy, you're wrong. And I think we sort of think there's only one truth. And a lot of times there might be one truth, but we're seeing it from different angles. And we don't really, there's a few things that there's a right and a wrong, but a lot of things are about based on our experience, based on, you know, what how we were brought up, what country we lived in, and all of those kind of things. So I think kind
Oh
of
yeah.
stepping back and going, could he be right and I be right? Or if that's what he needs and that's what I need, how can we meet those needs? Yeah,
These days there's as you know, there's a lot of conflict in certain places in the world. We think of the Arab-Israeli conflict, which flares up every few years, and now it's a major, major flare. And these things are sort of beyond our you and you and my ability to impact, given who we are. But um, you, have you ever been in a negotiation or working with a company where they just couldn't come together? It was intractable, or
Yeah, and I
have you
think,
always found a way?
no, I think you have to accept that if people don't want to solve something, there's no point locking them in a room and banging their heads together. And I think I have a T-shirt that says, "I'm a mediator, not a magician." Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, but I'm always really honest with people from the start that I'm not here to solve it. I'm here to help you guys talk to each other and see if you can solve it. And if it might be that the best thing you can do is walk away or come to some sort of settlement or whatever it is. But you're both in pain, whether they're companies or people. You're both in a lot of pain. The one thing you have in common is you want to be you want to be clearer about what's wrong, and ideally you want to resolve it. And I can't promise you that you'll resolve it because you guys know the situation. What we can promise is we'll try and make it clearer so you can see your next steps more clearly. And I think it's getting back to that thing about figuring out what the issues are and then figuring out what steps you take instead of going in and saying, "I know what you should do." Because we all want to do that. We all want to say, "But it's so clear. These people are such idiots." But that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You know, they
And
have
if
to
you would
find
just
it.
agree that you're an idiot, then it would all work out fine, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you would
And
just agree, it's like the Republicans and the Democrats in the United States. It's a shit show these days. It's just crazy. Everyone's
well,
just throwing axes at each
I always say the best way to handle a complaint is don't get defensive. Yeah, just don't get defensive. If you acknowledge that people have the right to be upset, that's really important. But you can't just say, "Oh, I can see you're upset." That's not going to work. You have to really see that you don't know why they feel that way. And if say you're sunburned and I come along and I say, "Oh, Robert, nice to see you." And you go, "Oh my gosh, you just hurt me." And I'm like, "Oh, what a, you know, he's a bit silly, isn't he? I was just trying to be friendly," and I get all huffy. But if you say, I'm sunburned, then I think, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but you're still in pain, yeah, and you're still maybe angry, but at least you understand that I didn't intentionally do that, hopefully. If I do it again after you've told me, that's different. But, and I think this is one of the big issues, is everybody else thinks the same way as them, that if you raise your voice, it means you're angry to some people, and that's offensive. And it's just clarifying, what is it you mean when you say or when you do? And this is how it lands with me. It doesn't mean that you're wrong in doing it, but that's the impact it has on me. So how, is it going to, if you explain to me that you don't mean it that way, is that going to solve the problem? Or is it that you realize how much it hurts and you stop doing it? So it's that conversation. But if neither person wants to change, there's not a lot you can do.
right. But you bring light onto the situation. You bring awareness of what's going on and what they're thinking and what they're expecting and what they're doing. And I'm sure while you're in a negotiation at some point, people go, "Oh, I see,
Yeah,
I
yeah, and
see,
that's
yes,
that's when the magic happens. When
right,
people say,
right, making up a
"Oh,
story about this and that, yeah."
yeah,
Um, Very interesting. So, it sounds like the work you do with people and companies is much like therapy, but in some ways maybe more effective. I
yeah." I
mean, the
always
thing
say
about
I'm
therapy
not a
is you often go,
therapist.
right,
I'm
I'm
not a
better than a
therapist
therapist.
because no, I think there are people who need therapy, but in
Yeah,
mediation and in the other sort of thing I do, which is reflective debriefing, is I believe that the people have the capacity to solve the situation. My job is to, shine the light so they see their own strengths or they see their own, blind spots. But I'm not there to help them because they're broken. I'm help I'm there to kind of shine a light or help them find the light switch or whatever you want to say. It's it's not that they're not able to do something. It's just
right.
they sometimes don't know they're able to do it. So
Have you
it's
trained other people in doing what you do?
yeah, this is my exciting thing at the moment is
Oh,
there's
tell me.
it's well I basically tell people I like to make myself redundant as a mediator by giving people the skills because I find it heartbreaking at the end of a mediation where people have maybe been in conflict for 6 months or in neighborhood things for years, and they say, huh, I wish we'd had this conversation 6 months or 10 years ago. And I think that is so sad because there's so much pain and suffering and anger and damage. So I wrote a
Yeah,
book about how to kind of manage conflict because conflict's not always bad because otherwise, it's like pain. It's a message that there's something that something's important and it needs to be addressed. But it's about, I'd love to teach it in schools. At the moment, one of the projects I'm really excited about is I volunteer with a charity that does mediation skills training in prison. And we
oh,
did it in November, then we did it again in January. And these are, it's in a maximum security prison, which had a lot of violence,
well,
long-term, long-term lifers. And 4 years ago, they started the program, and it's had a huge impact on the level of violence. And they train not just the staff, but they train 6 staff and 6 prisoners at the same time. And so we're there for 3 days training them. So we trained one lot in November, and then we went back in January, and two of the guys from that lot came to help us train the new lot of prisoners and officers. And I was just amazed at how, in a really, really difficult environment, these guys who have had very little help and, they haven't had the benefits and the background and the education, but they've really taken on board those basic conflict resolution skills and made a real difference to that difficult environment they're living in. Because it's not like me where I can go in, I can do my mediation and then go away. They have to live being mediators. because they're with the people all the time, particularly the prisoners. And that's something I would love to see rolled out to more prisons, to more, schools, all of these places. People need to learn how to disagree better. As sorry, but Tammy Lenski is a mediator. She's sort of one of my gurus, and she talks about teaching
What's the
people to
name?
Tammy Lenski,
Okay.
Lenski, and she
Yeah.
talks about teaching people to disagree better so that you can disagree without damaging. And I think the other people that do a lot of that kind of work are, have you heard of the Crucial Conversations team?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, they did a lot of research into what makes some people good. And that's those conversations, where you're talking along and then all of a sudden someone says something and you think, oh, it really matters what I say now. And our tendency then is to go to fight or flight, but they sort of have devised some training, and that I've used that as well in teaching people, so that when you feel your heart rate's sort of speeding up, take some deep, slow breaths, and that lets your brain kick back in. And then because normally when you really, really need to say the right thing, you say the wrong thing. Yeah. So there's
Oh, I've never
lots
done
of,
that.
no, neither have I. But yeah, so there's so much good stuff out there that I really want to get people that wouldn't normally have access to this kind of training, this kind of, and make it easily digest, because most of it's quite simple. It's just getting it across in a way that people understand, and sort of taking all this academic research and making it into, this is how, this is what happens when you listen. This is what happens when you take some deep breaths before you react. This is how your brain
Right.
works. And that's why, when you start feeling a little bit angry, just pause. Yeah. So yeah, I would love more people to know this stuff.
Right. So do you talk about those things in your book?
Yeah. Um,
What's
but
the name
I
of your
did
book?
that. It's conflict first aid, but I really,
Conflict for.
I've I've learned a lot since then. That was in 2018. So that's something that, in my retirement, I'm going to write something that's even simpler, maybe even something that has a bit more, something maybe that teenagers or young or even preteens, to help them, because I think if you learn these kind of things when you're young, it's such a skill. I mean, I was talking to one of the
Yeah.
prisoners, and I said to him, I'm amazed at your skills in mediation, how much you've come on. And he said, it's just opened a whole door. It's changed my relationships with my family. It's changed my environment, because I see things differently. And, it was just really exciting. And, I feel privileged to be part of that.
Fantastic. Is your book available on Amazon?
I think so, yeah. Um, but
Is it
yeah,
also on Kindle?
I don't know that it
Is it
is,
on
because it
Kindle?
was done as a sort of a textbook for business students. So it was done by an educational publisher. So I don't know if they do it as if it's available as Kindle or not.
Right,
But that
right.
I'm now enthused. I'm going to go off and start doing my more, because I was disappointed at the price, because I really want to do something that is affordable for everybody, and it was a bit more
Yeah.
expensive when the publishers brought it out.
Right, right. Well, the things you're talking about are exactly what so many people are looking for. I mean, just how to deal with conflict, how to deal with sticky problems, how to work out what is the issue so that we can move forward. If I could, if I had a wish, would be write a mass market book and get it out there. But
Well, I
that
have
takes a
to.
lot of work and
In
a lot of.
in the meantime, on my website, I followed your advice, and I have lots of free resources. So there's sort of a do-it-yourself guide to work through a problem and one thing and another. So
Oh,
yeah,
great. Well, in this the recording, we're going to post it in a few places, and we'll have your resources and your website and stuff like that, so people will
thank you.
find it. I
Yeah,
just
I
love
think
what you've been sharing. I mean, it's such it's I'm sure some therapists have learned some of these skills, but it just seems so eminently practical,
and
simpler,
I think
so simple in so many ways.
yeah, and I think that's kind of the essence of an ordinary visionary, isn't it? Keep it simple, keep it clear, and then just do it. And accept that, there's lots of other people out there that are doing similar things. And if you talk to them, maybe you can do more together. Um, so I believe in connecting people to do stuff as well.
Nancy, thank you so much for talking to me today. You've really lifted
Thank
my
you.
spirits.
Oh,
Really,
you
really,
can tell. I love this job. I feel so privileged to have found this, and I will carry on doing it. I just love it. Yeah. And thank you
right,
so much,
fantastic.
Robert, for all your advice over the years. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, Nancy. So, best of luck to you.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure a lot of people get a lot of value from this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You take care.